Let me tell you something absurd. You have been writing papers for absolute strangers for years. People you would never meet or never had coffee with or probably never meet in future too. And somehow, one of these and a stranger reads your paper, probably in the midnight, probably annoyed and definitely underpaid, and decides, yes, this is good, publish it. A complete stranger endorsed you for your thinking. Now, this is wild if you stop and think about it. You know why that happened? It's not because of your methodology, it's not because of your citations. Yeah, I mean, they work, but underneath all of this, it was empathy. You understood what the reviewers need to see. You anticipated what objections they might have that you addressed in advance. You structured your arguments for their brains and not yours. Academia taught you empathy, but never ever named it so. Now, when it comes to the most defining or deciding moments, the most important moments of your career transition while moving to industry, you forget to bring empathy to the table. Today, we fix that. There are three places where empathy absolutely changes the hiring game. Number one, resume. Number two, interview. And number three, negotiation. Hi, I am Dr. Rima Day, a smart dumb PhD, leading PhDs from 7+ countries in their career transition journey who are actively transitioning into consultancy, tech, and pharma. Let's get started with the first one, which is resume. So here's how a PhD generally starts writing their resume. They open a Word document and they think about everything that they have done in the past, including things that make them look smart, which may be publications or conferences or anything that they feel proud about, and they dump it in their resume. Now, that is precious. I really mean that. But that's completely backwards. Because what's happening on the other end of the document, which is the recruiters and the decision makers who are having a look at your resume. So a recruiter might have 200 or 2000 plus resumes on their table. They have a deadline to meet, so they have a headache, and they have no clue about what multi-axial fatigue in stainless steel publication means unless it is mentioned in the JD. And so they exactly have 6 to 8 seconds to scan and not even read, just simply scan your resume to put you in the yes pile to decide whether you're going to get an interview call or not. And this is so true because I speak to so many recruiters and hiring managers through my podcast and my LinkedIn networking initiatives. Okay. So now let's quickly flip that and think about when you were sending your publication to a journal. What did you do? You understood their aims and scope. You looked through the other publications accepted in that journal. So you mirrored their language, their framing, and their structure. Now, this is exactly empathy, and you forget to apply it in your resume. So, what does empathy look like in resume? In resume, it looks like going through the JD word by word and line by line, and then asking yourself, okay, what have I done in the past that shows that I can exactly do these tasks asked in the job? Okay, that's number one. Number two is, how have I done it? What tools have I used? Are any of the tools mentioned in the JD? Have I used them? And number three is, what impact did it create? What result did it create? Who benefited? So, quick examples of this would be, let's assume you are a simulation engineer. So, your bullet could look anything like, reduced the simulation time from 1 month to 3 hours for an assembly line manufacturing process for a startup. Or if you are a chemist, it could look something like 100 plus NMR experiments run in a span of 5 months that resulted in increasing the reaction yield by 35%. Now, do you see the recruiters can instantly feel the impact of your work because it is so simplified. So, simply put, empathy is about understanding their problem from their point of view and then positioning yourself from their point of view. Now, with that, let's move to the next one, which is interviews. I want to ask you a question over here, and please answer it honestly. When you walk into an interview room, either virtually or physically, what are the thoughts looping in your head? Is it something like, I hope I don't get anything wrong, I hope I behave normal, I hope they don't ask me something I have no answer for, I hope I deliver the answer as I practice them for, I hope everything goes right? Now, completely understandable, but that also is a empathy failure, because the whole focus of those thoughts is on you and not on the interviewers. Now, when you apply the empathy lens over here, you might realize the interviewer who is walking into the interview room, either virtually or physically, might be coming into it from a meeting which was a high intensity meeting where their process or methodology was challenged, and that's a thought that's now occupying their brain space. Or they might have a deadline that they meet 2 days down the line, and that's also occupying their brain space. And this is where you need to anticipate what could be the problems of this hirers or hiring managers team, and how can you frame your stories around their problem. Now, when it comes to framing stories, I have this framework called the what, how, who, and so what framework. You can find the link to the video somewhere on the screen and start using it in your interview. This has been used by my community members, which has landed them industry offers. And coming back to the empathy part, so to wrap it, they're actually assessing you on two things, which is competence and warmth. In the process, they're trying to answer three questions for themselves. Number one is, do I like you? And that has got to do a lot with warmth. Number two is, do I trust you with how you do the work? And that has got to do with your competence. And number three is, can you make my life easier? Now, that is both a combination of competence and warmth. In fact, my podcast with two different scientists, which one of them being Dr. Anindo from GE, he is a principal scientist there. He talks about what happens in the inside interview rooms, being in hiring positions himself. You can check out this video over here, and how warmth becomes important when you have the best of technical skills. And in the other video, where I speak to one of my community members who transitioned into healthcare and now is in decision-making tables for hiring, Lavanya, talks about how competence makes a difference in the interview rooms. Okay, now with that, let's move to the third pointer, which is about negotiation. So you got the offer. Congratulations! But now, please don't accept it immediately. Reema, how can you say that? I get it, okay? I've been training PhDs inside my community on an average who have been landing offers where they negotiated a hike of 50% on the offer made. So this comes from my own data. You better trust me. Now, when it comes to negotiation, I understand this instinct of a PhD to quickly jump and accept the offer because you are anxious. What if this is the only offer I have? How can I ask for more? So this is where you need to apply the empathy lens again to understand the questions that you're asking. Most of the time, PhDs say that I might appear a lot greedy if I ask for more, and the hiring manager may think I'm so greedy. Number two, they ask, what if they rescind the offer? Now, the answers to this is, number one, when you're thinking that the hiring manager might think that you're greedy, know that that judgment is coming from within you before the hiring manager declares you as greedy, because you're seeing yourself as asking for more as greedy, and you are projecting that as an assumption on the hiring manager, which is not true. Okay. Number two, you think that they'll rescind the offer. They will not. Think about it. They went with you through the entire process for what? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or 4 months? We don't know. And this entire process had help them to arrive at a solution that you are the solution to their business need. Now, if they had to redo it entirely, think about the amount of time, resource, headache that would cost them a lot, and they're not willing to do that. So if you ask for a 30%, 50% hike, then know that that doesn't is not a great amount for the company. So when you're thinking from a space of their problem in negotiation and how you bring in value, how uniquely with your past experiences you bring in value, then know that people or hirers are always ready to pay you for the amount that you feel is right for you. Okay, so coming back to where we started, the stranger reviewing your paper at midnight, they didn't endorse you for the perfect data you had. They endorsed you because you made it easy for them to understand you. You anticipated what they might need. You structured your thinking around their mental models, and hence it became easy for them to say yes. Now, that is empathy, and you have been using this skill for years in academia. So when you're transitioning to industry, it's not asking you to become a new person, but it's asking you to remember who you already are. So bring that person to the resume page, in the interview room, and on the negotiation table. So I believe as a PhD, you already know how to do all these three. You just forgot what to call it. If this video helped you change your thought process, think differently, then please share it with any other PhD on their career transition journey. And for now, this is Dr. Rima Dey, a Smartdom PhD, signing off, and I'll see you in the next one.